Hey guys, Azralynn here, and today we're going to be talking about being a sneaky beaky survivor. Now what I mean by sneaky is just avoiding being found by the killer, and if you do get found, making use of the terrain and your perks in order to get away from the killer. Without further ado, here are 5 tips to help you be a better sneaky survivor. Don't alert the killer. There are multiple ways that you can alert the killer. Things like disarming traps and cleansing hex totems are unavoidable, but most things that alert the killer can be avoided. Whether it be fast vaulting over a pallet or a window, completely sabotaging a hook, closing a chest, or standing still doing nothing for too long. But the main way that people are going to alert the killer is by failing skill checks. Alright, so repairing all the generators and opening up the exit gates to escape is your goal as a survivor. Repairing generators, healing, and sabotaging all trigger skill checks. Missing skill checks will alert the killer, and that is never a good thing if you're trying to be sneaky. While repairing a generator, there's always an audio indicator that you hear before the skill check actually pops up, and then it's just a matter of hitting the right button at the right time to succeed the skill check. If you or another survivor fails a skill check on the generator, in most cases it's better to just leave. Get away from that generator, get away from that person who potatoed, and go work on something else. The only time you should stick around to finish that generator is if it's either almost done or you know for sure that the killer is actively busy somewhere else. If you find yourself struggling with generator skill checks, you might want to give the perk Technician a try. Technician reduces the sound that generator repairs can be heard by 8 meters, and if you do fail a skill check, there's a 50% chance that the generator explosion will be completely prevented and therefore won't alert the killer. Pay attention. Knowing who the killer is, and more importantly knowing where the killer is, are crucial to survival. You can't always rely on there being a heartbeat to know that the killer's coming. Stealthy killers like the Wraith, the Pig, the Spirit, or Michael Myers can really catch you off guard. So always keep a good lookout, no matter what you are doing. If you find yourself struggling with paying attention to where the killer is, I suggest trying one of the following perks. Spine Chill, which visually notifies you when the killer is standing within 36-meter range and facing your direction, and there's no cooldown on this perk. Premonition, which gives you an audio indicator that the killer is standing within 36 meters of you in the direction that you're facing. This perk has a 30-second cooldown though, and in my experiences, I spend too much time looking around, I usually waste it, so I'm not a big fan of this one. But plenty of others have used it to great success. Alert, which allows you to see the killer for 5 seconds whenever the killer breaks a pallet or a generator. Currently on the PTB, there is no limit to the range or a cooldown on alert. And Dark Sense, which allows you to see the killer anytime a generator is completed for 5 seconds, and then for 10 seconds when all generators are powered. Each of those perks can help tell you where the killer is or if the killer's coming. Anticipate killer perks. The goal as a sneaky survivor is to not be found, but there are killer perks that allow the killers to see the survivor auras. Learning what these perks are and understanding how they work is key to learning to play against them. The main killer perks that you will encounter are Barbecue and Chili and A Nurse's Calling. Barbecue and Chili allows the killer to see survivor auras for 4 seconds whenever they hook a survivor if the survivors are outside of a 40-meter range from where the survivor's hooked. In order to avoid your aura being seen, you need to get within that 40-meter range, but that isn't always possible. You can also attempt to hide your aura behind an unrepaired generator, but I do admit that it can be difficult to position yourself perfectly at times. Another strategy that I use a lot is to pretend like I'm going one direction for those 4 seconds, and then I'll completely change where I'm going. And doing that often results in the killer just wandering around where you were and wasting a bit of time there while your friends can get gens done. Nurse's Calling is another aura reading ability that you really need to be careful of. A Nurse's Calling allows the killer to see the survivors that are within a 28-meter range healing. Not only can she see the person being healed, but the people healing them as well. The best way to avoid Nurse's Calling is to just be really far from the killer when you do go to heal. Other less common killer perks that you'll need to be aware of are Rancor, Bitter Murmur, and Territorial Imperative. Rancor allows the killer to see all survivors for 3 seconds whenever a generator is repaired. Rancor is an obsession perk, so if there's no obsession, you don't need to worry about Rancor. In addition to seeing survivors, Rancor also lets the killer one-shot the obsession and worry them on the ground when all the generators are powered. Bitter Murmur allows the killer to see all survivors for 5 seconds once a generator is started, and then for 10 seconds once all generators are powered. Bitter Murmur is the killer version of Dark Sense that survivors have. If you think that the killer has Rancor or Bitter Murmur, it might be a good idea to pretend like you're going one way for a few seconds, but then go somewhere completely different, just as if you were spotted by barbecue and chili. And then there's Territorial Imperative, which allows the killer to see survivors that enter the basement for 3 seconds, as long as the killer is more than 32 meters away. This perk is on a 30-second cooldown though. This perk isn't that common on most killers, but let's be honest here, going near the basement is usually a bad idea to begin with. On top of the perks that I mentioned, there are some killer add-ons that also let the killers see survivor auras, but the majority of them are very rare or ultra rare, so you won't encounter them very often. As a survivor, you need to familiarize yourself with these perks and just learn how to avoid them. Stay calm. So the killer is approaching your direction, but hasn't actually laid eyes on you yet. All of your instincts are telling you to just run, and get out of there. But in a lot of cases, running is one of the worst things you can do if you haven't been spotted yet. There are countless times where I've had killers literally circling rocks trying to find me, but never actually seen me and eventually just giving up looking and just going somewhere else. If you sprint for even just a second, leaving those scratch marks will make the killer keep looking in that area. So you need to be smart about when you actually run, and in cases like this where the killer's nearby, that using perks like Urban Evasion will really come in clutch. Urban Evasion at rank 3 is absolutely amazing. It allows you to crouch walk at walking speed, allowing you to maintain a lower profile and reducing your chances of being seen while not suffering a movement penalty doing so. Urban Evasion is one of my favorite perks for being sneaky, and I run it almost all of the time. Yes, it is possible that the killer will eventually spot you and you will have to run, but the longer that you can stall and have the killer keep looking for you is more time that you're buying for your teammates. There are even some cases where the killer will look right at you and still not even see you. There are a lot of blind killers out there. They're far more common in the lower ranks, but they still do exist at high rank as well. If you start running, the killer could see your scratch marks, or even the chase music might kick in, and the killer's definitely gonna know that you're there. But knowing when you should and shouldn't run, it is gonna take a lot of practice, but staying calm and keeping your wits about you can help you elude the killer for a lot longer. In many cases, you'll be able to stay completely hidden, but in some cases, the chase is inevitable. So when you get in a chase, the main thing you're going to try to do is break line of sight. Now, in order to drop line of sight, you're going to need to make use of the terrain and take advantage of all those walls, pallets, windows, or anything that's big enough to hide your character. Just running out of sight alone, though, might not be enough depending on what rank you are. The more distance that you can create between yourself and the killer, the more likely that your jukes will work. There are several ways to create space between yourself and the killer. The easiest among them being making use of exhaustion perks, dropping pallets, climbing over windows, or just simply looking behind you as you run away to see where the killer goes so that you can go the other way. I highly recommend using an exhaustion perk in every perk build you run if possible. But which exhaustion perk you use is going to come down to what playstyle you prefer or what map you're playing on, and we'll go more into depth about the exhaustion perks in another video. As I mentioned before, running leaves scratch marks, so when you're trying to drop killer aggro, you can actually use these scratch marks against the killer, and leave a trail of scratch marks headed in one direction while you scoot back quietly going an entirely different direction. Killers tend to follow those scratch marks until those scratch marks stop somewhere. Making use of closets to hide in can come in really handy, but never leave scratch marks up to the closet that you're in, because it's more than likely that the killer will find you there. Once the trail of scratch marks ends, the killer is going to start looking for you. Sometimes they'll keep going forward, sometimes they'll turn around and come back. You really don't know how the killer is going to react because every killer plays differently. If the killer does turn around, you need to make sure that you're positioned so that you're not in line of sight. Do your best to keep the terrain in between you and the killer, and be careful of how you move after you've lost the killer. So many times I lose the killer and then I wind up walking right back into them, so definitely be careful of that. Dropping killer aggro is much easier if you are not injured. Iron Will is an amazing perk for losing the killer while you're injured. Iron Will at rank 3 makes your character completely silent while injured. Whether you're moving or standing still, it doesn't matter, your persistent cries while being in pain are perfectly quiet. But even though you're not making any noise, you need to be able to hide your blood trail. So making use of tall grass to hide the blood is highly recommended. If you are injured and don't have Iron Will, you will need to create a lot more space in order to remain hidden because the killer can hear you cry. Some other perks that can help you lose the killer more quickly are Lightweight, Dance With Me, and Quick and Quiet. Lightweight causes your scratch marks from running to disappear 3 seconds sooner, making it more difficult for the killer to follow your tracks. Dance With Me causes your scratch marks to disappear for 3 seconds after fast vaulting over a window or pallet, or leaving a locker in a sprint. And if you can drop line of sight during that 3 seconds and sneak off without leaving scratch marks, the killer could definitely have a hard time finding you. Dance With Me is on a 40-second cooldown though. Quick and Quiet makes the fast vaulting sound and going into a locker completely quiet. This perk is on a 20-second cooldown though. Quick and Quiet can be good for misdirection as long as the killer didn't see you go over the pallet, window, or into the locker. And it synergizes incredibly well with Dance With Me. Well guys, that's it for my 5 tips on being a sneaky survivor. And just to summarize those 5 points there, don't alert the killer, pay attention to your surroundings, anticipate the killer's perks, stay calm while the killer is looking for you, and if you do get found, do your best to create space and break that line of sight to get away. I hope these tips have helped you, but do keep in mind that there are a lot of other things you can do to help your survivor game improve. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below. What tips do you have for fellow survivors? What are your favorite perks to use and why? And I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on what I said in this video today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did like it, don't forget to smash that like button, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching guys, and have a wonderful day.